Now we're recording.
Recording has started.
That's good because then everyone else can't see like the fumble. Even though I just talked about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So welcome to the orientation for Love Talks, maintaining your relationship like you maintain your car. Whose idea do you think that title was?
Well, I don't do a great job of maintaining the car either, so.
Ish.
Ish.
I think the light came on, right, for the oil change?
Yeah, finally, yeah. I've been talking about it for 2 weeks and now the lights come on, so it's like.
And that's what happens, right? We wait until the light comes on and then it's almost too late, but we'll get into that. So we wanted to first, just tell you what the plan is. We're going to be here hopefully for around 2 hours. We're going to start with the introduction. So we'll tell you about who we are. You're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like. Again, that won't be recorded, but then at least we can see who's here if you feel like it and maybe where you're from. So you can even do that now if you want. And then we're going to teach you a model, and this is the relationship triangle. And the relationship triangle is something that we've studied for like 1.5 years, I think.
Yeah, almost. Actually, close to 9 months.
I said 1.5 years. That's like double.
Double. Yeah, you're. Maybe you were still working through it in your head. But yeah, no, we studied it, but then we lived it, and we attended different workshops. And this triangle, relationship triangle, when we get to it, is Dr. Chuck Spezzano's model, and we kind of lived it with him, kind of instructing us through this model. And yeah, so I kind of posted on one of the social media channels, like, I don't know if it actually saved our marriage, but I feel like it definitely saved me personally, and started letting me show up into this relationship. But we'll get into that.
Okay, I'm gonna just move the chat box so that I can control it.
Of course, yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
I like control.
She likes control, yeah.
So I'm gonna talk about that, and I'll control the chat.
That's something she's working through, obviously.
Okay, wait. Before we keep going, I just want to say hi to everyone. So we're coming from Vancouver, from Surrey, from Richmond, from Malawi, Africa. Welcome. Wow. Overseas. What time is it there? Tell us what time it is. New West. And we have Vancouver on unceded ancestral territories. Yes, of Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Thank you for that. Coquitlam, Vancouver. In Calgary, extremely excited to start this course. You can all read this, right?
Probably they can.
Okay,
read, yeah.
So everybody can read this, that people are joining. They just got married in Edmonton, Tsleil-Waututh, Boston, Toronto. It's 10 o'clock p.m. Wow. Thank you for joining us, even though it is late.
I'll tell you what, I do not work on my relationships at 10 o'clock at night. I don't have the energy, so.
So thank you for showing
Thank you for showing us the model.
And being here so late. So do you want to tell them what our plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we go through the triangle model, we'll actually talk about the program that we're putting on for the month of February, which is the couples group that we'll be running. And yes, you do have to be a couple, but we'll get to that.
But not for today.
Not for today. Not for today. You're in. Today is just the kind of the orientation. We really want to share Chuck Spezzano's, and I know Sarah shares this all the time, and it's that important to us. So we do want to share this model with anyone.
And that'll take the most amount of time of our whole 2 hours. So that's like the meat of the project today.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're going to talk about the different commitments that we need to make as part of this group. If you're planning on joining this group, there are some commitments that we're going to ask you to make, and then hopefully we'll just answer your questions. And then we close. What did we decide about the relationship triangle? We'll let them ask questions.
With the triangle, we'll go through it, and then we'll have a little bit of Q&A through the chat, because I just really want to make sure you really get it. And that's kind of the exciting part for me, is like figuring out your mind and how it works, because I'm there. We don't even tell them who we are.
No, well, that's the introduction part. So let's introduce ourselves.
I love that you guys are talking to each other in the chat. I love that. Part of why we're doing this is to start building community with people who are in relationship and interested in personal growth. I know when if we think about our friends, our couple friends, when we first got married, they weren't really in the same vibe space as we were, and as we've kind of spent more and more time enjoying this work, we've started to attract more people around us in our friend circle that that do the same thing. And so we wanted to also build that community.
Yeah, and it's definitely a lot of work.
Oh, we got someone here from the US. I'm ignoring that. So rude.
No, so yeah, my name's Spezzano. For those that don't know me, I know a lot of people know Syra because she's a superstar. I am I said it. I don't mean it. I am a technology consultant by my work, by training. But I am actually in the process of becoming a life and relationship coach, and that's something that's been interesting me for a few years. And actually, because I turned 40 this year, the family got together and said, "Enough of your talk, now go do it." And so they actually they actually bought me the program, and I'm in the middle of it. I'm doing the practicum work. So thank you to all the family. But yeah, that's a quick introduction about me.
Are you sharing the screen? Can people see it?
I thought they could.
I think so. Can you guys see this? The screen with the, okay, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes in the chat. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, I didn't introduce myself.
Yes.
I am Dr. Syra Spezzano, and I think most people maybe on our call know who I am. There's some people who are here because their friends have invited them here or told you about me. So here I am in the flesh, and I have my background in transpersonal psychology. So a lot of people come to work with me because they want to incorporate their spiritual beliefs and their cultural values into therapy. And so there's that intersection point between the mind and the heart and the spirit. So that's the work that I do. We do these workshops, I run groups, individual one-to-one counseling. So that's kind of where my fingers are in those pots. And I'm a wife and a mother and a daughter and a sister and all those other things as well. So yeah, that's me. Anything else that people should know about me?
People should just know Syra. I think that's important.
Are you being sarcastic?
Never. I'm never sarcastic. So, all right, let's.
So rude. Jeez. Okay, so let's get started. So we wanted to introduce ourselves and kind of let you know that all of us, well, in our experience, there's a face that we show the world, and then there's what's really going on. And we've had that experience in our own lives, and we wanted to kind of just tell you a little bit about our story and what happened, like where we're coming from, and why we think we can hold this group, and like what's so special. So I want to just tell you a little bit about our story. So I don't know if you know, but before you click, don't click yet.
Don't.
No.
You see the fingers that get pointed. This is what we're working on. I don't know what you guys are all working on.
The control, yeah. So you'll see here what you see when there's nobody watching is the same, pretty much. See, now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, how we met. So we met online, and we had this like whirlwind romance. We met
over the phone,
over the phone.
MSN Messenger for those that are young enough to remember.
And Messenger, remember that?
Yeah.
And then we met in person, and we were together for a week, and then we decided we wanted to get married. And neither of us had ever even considered doing something like that before. And here we are, 14.
Yeah.
14 years.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, 14 years later, we're still here, and we're having fun. And but it wasn't always smooth sailing. So we want to tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Now you can click.
All right, I'm clicking.
It didn't work. There we go. Okay, so this is a picture of us about
2013, so about 7 years ago, I'd say.
And I'm from Calgary. And so this is the Calgary Stampede. We were going to a Stampede breakfast. For those who are not from Calgary, in July, there's this big cowboy festival where like everybody dresses up as cowboys, and all over the city, there's these free breakfasts. So you can go and you get free. The problem is they're really usually early in the morning. That's the only problem, but the food is delicious. So we were heading to a pancake breakfast. That's why we're in our cowboy clothing. You're just clicking the wrong.
All right.
Okay, there we go. So, and we wanted to show you this picture because in the picture, it looks like we're just this happy family, right?
Well, tell us what you think.
Oh yeah.
From the picture.
You tell us. Write in the chat box. When you see that picture, what do you notice? Just type it in the chat box. Let's see what you think is going on. Thank you we're not trying to be entertaining. Someone said you're
Yeah,
so
yeah.
entertaining.
Living
Oh,
with
look at
Syra
that.
is very
Syra
entertaining.
looks, that's a good one. Oh,
Oh,
see, I did the wrong click now. Oh, man. You know those new mice, the fancy ones? I can't. Okay, picture perfect family, beautiful family, happy family. How do I go up without changing that? Okay, happy family is what we see. Somebody said Syra looks tired and Faze looks hungry. Is that that's somebody who knows me very well. That's the only reason you know I look tired. That's my sister. Yeah, genuine smiles, loving, caring husband.
yes.
Happy family day. You guys look so different. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, so I don't know, for those who know me or maybe don't know me, I struggled most of my life with a food addiction. And so I've been very heavy most of my life. No longer, I'm kind of in recovery, but yeah, I look very different then. And so that's what we look like. Like we're ready to go to the Stampede Stadium, happy family, smiles and joy, and posing for a picture.
Posing for a picture.
And that's the truth, is that we were just posing for a picture. Because
Right.
none of the other stuff that you wrote, except for the tired and hungry, well, Faison's always hungry, but
I'm always hungry, yes.
but yeah, we were really not doing well at all
Yeah.
in our lives.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Like as we talk about the face that we put out for the world, whether individually or as a couple or as a family, there are, you know, especially with the growth of social media, we we post these pictures showing kind of the best part of us, and even that day, like that was like the best moment that we could capture, and we posted that. And obviously, like at least from what was happening, right? Like there was financial struggle that we were going through. There was
we were actually, we didn't even have our own space at that time. We were living with family members because we couldn't afford our own space.
Yeah.
And we just had a baby, like she was maybe a year or so. And you know, we were living with our new baby in with family, and there's a lot of conflict in the home that we were living in, and we were actually meeting. We were all supposed to go together like this big happy family, and then there's this big fight in the morning, and so some people went in some car and other people went in another car, and we didn't even get there together.
Well, yeah,
like
I was at work, and I should, and anyways,
so bad. That was such a bad day.
Right, and the point isn't about that, you know, what we were going through, like the stories. I mean, you know, in the moments, stories are important, obviously. What was happening is important, but looking back, that wasn't really important. What was important was how we lacked the tools, how we lacked maturity, how we lacked self-esteem, how we lacked self-worth, all of those things that piled on to say we couldn't deal with the situations, right? And
but we were putting on this face.
Yeah, and
right? We were acting like everything's fine, and anybody who were to see us from the outside would think everything's fine, nothing's going on. And I think when I work with people who are going through relationship problems, that's a theme I often hear, is that, like, you know, nobody would know that we're struggling. And if nobody knows you're struggling, it's really hard to get help, right? Because you're not actually asking for help or telling anybody that you need.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things in this, and again, we're not saying just post things in everywhere where you need to say I need help. That's not the point here. The point is that when we're not willing to admit to ourselves, right? Now one of the things that we've kind of done is we don't post pictures if we're not actually in a good mood. Or sometimes we post pictures that
show us in a bad
mood. But it's really us, at least at that point. I know I'm not going to speak for Syra, but like me, I wasn't going to be honest with myself that I needed help, right? And that to me was was kind of the turning point of, okay, how do we grow as individuals, because and as couples as well, which we'll get to in the model.
Somebody wrote in the chat, everything is awesome, and I think you mean everything is awesome from the Lego movie, right? There's this song. Okay, so this is probably, yeah, she's a mom, so she knows. Yeah, she got it. Yeah, there's this movie called the Lego Movie. For those who don't have kids, you probably never watch it and don't watch it. It's not that good. But there's this song in the movie. It's like everything is awesome, and the whole song, like they're singing about, it's just so awesome. But everything is not awesome, right? Bad things happen, but they're just that's the mindset. It's like, let's just pretend everything is awesome all the time, and it's really not. Oh, someone else has seen the movie, but
and they love it.
So you love it? Okay, maybe you were into Lego. I don't know. I don't know.
How about we show the next picture?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I got distracted by the Lego. How do we do it?
Just click there.
There?
Yeah. And then one more time.
One more time?
Yeah. There
Okay,
you go.
there we go. So this is August, this last August. What do you see? Write it in the chat box. What do you see when you look at this picture? Real. What else do you see? Authentic. When you see this picture, how does it make you feel? What thoughts come to mind? Truth and transparency, comfortable. Yeah. So we're not posing.
Well.
Resilience, a moment. How I see you guys, that's my sister again. Organic.
Yeah. The funny thing is we were posing because you guys are all making a weird face.
Another picture with the fam.
That's right.
Yeah, and it wasn't so
Tried after
it was, you know, when people like they're like smile and then they take a bunch of pictures, not just the smiling picture. That's what was happening there. Like we were like, I was like, come on guys, like what are you doing? And they were like, you know, the pics.
Yeah.
The child was tired. Yep, after the drive, exactly. She was so irritated. She wanted to go home. Fun and stylish. Ooh, thank you. See our yellows matching? That was on purpose. And thank you, beautiful family. So the reason we wanted to show you this picture is this was a time in our lives when we were so happy and so connected as a family and not trying to post, right? Not trying to show anything.
And so one thing we'll talk about right now is this particular picture was a time when we as a family made a big decision to move from a town where we had connections, right? We were living in the mainland Vancouver. I think within a month or a month and a half time frame, we sold our place and we decided we're going to move to a small town. And so right now we're coming from Blind Bay, British Columbia, a small town, very, very small town compared to
I think
where
there's
we
less
were.
people in our town than in our former place of worship.
Right.
On a Friday. There's less people in the town.
So, and we decided to kind of say, okay, we want to start slowing life down, right? And so this picture was, I think, a couple of days or a day or so after we made that move, and it was an important decision that we made as a family. Well, you know, the kids will say, I don't know how much input they had into it, but we decided like this is what's working or will be what's best for us. And so from a growth perspective, you know, one of the things that has been mentioned is about being authentic. And yeah, we're working on it. I don't think we're authentic all the time. We
at home.
At home.
At home we are.
At home, but even at home sometimes we don't share.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I'll speak.
I always share. He always knows. Come on.
Yes, absolutely. I'll speak for myself. I don't maybe
Before you're like,
always.
I'm not going to speak for Syra. Now you're like, we.
Listen, you just like you have control issues to work on. I have this accountability issue to work on, so I'm working on that. No, so I think this is what's important for us is how do we as individuals and as couples show up in the world,
and in a real way.
In a real way, and it's not about just showing up in the picture that way either, right? Like we can be authentic in that picture and then still be struggling, and that's okay, right? Like because that happens. we do go through our cycles of that. So yeah, I did want to share that.
So I'm just going to interrupt ourselves. So for those who have been using Zoom for a while, I figured out this feature that you may or may not know about. You probably all know about it, but you might not. So if you see our screen and if you see us as a little corner box in the corner, you can actually move it over. There's like a little arrow and you can move it over so we get bigger. So
I think.
Well, that's how the one that we watched. Maybe you can't, but if you want to see us bigger, you can press that little arrow and move us over. Okay, shall we keep going? How do I go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Just double click?
Just click
one click.
So then you're in the slideshow. Yeah, there you go.
Aha, okay. So we're gonna, well, before we start the model, feel free as we're going to like leave. I love that you guys are interacting with us and through 5 months of online school, and right? Okay, good. So at least somebody benefited from that information. Yes, so you can just So then the screen is small and you can see us bigger. I figured that out because we're in this course right now and I love the speaker, but she's always this tiny piece in the corner. So then I learned how to expand her face. Okay, ready for the next part?
Yeah. So as we go through the model, please, if you have questions, type them in the chat. We'll try to get to them and try to answer them.
I think actually, because I'm going to get distracted.
All right.
I think what would be better for me, because I'm going to speak for myself.
See, we decided as a team that this is what we would ask people to do.
But now we're in it.
Now we're in it, and she's like,
things change in the moment phase.
Welcome to my life. Well, please.
What would help me is if we let us go through and explain the whole model and maybe take notes. That's why we asked you to bring a notebook and a pen. We're not going to be sharing these slides. So, if you see things you like, please copy them down. And when we're done, I keep wanting to say complaining. Are you complaining? I'm subconsciously picking up on some complaining.
Okay. It's not about me. Well, let's
back to you. Those people here who have been my clients are probably like, this is a side of Dr. Syra I rarely see. She's like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's so good to be here. Okay, so yeah, let us finish explaining. And then once we're done, then you can ask us all your questions. We'll have a good amount of time to go through some questions. So if you have questions, maybe just jot them down in your own notebook and then put them in the chat when we ask your questions. That would be more helpful so that I'm not distracted. However, if you have comments, if you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense, or never thought of it that way, please type those in the chat because we'd love to interact. If we were all in a room together, we'd be able to see your faces and be able to kind of connect with you in that way. But since we're just doing it this way, we'd love to hear from you as we go along.
Good.
If I press the forward button, does that work?
It should. No.
Let's try.
Yeah.
Okay, here is the triangle created by Dr. Chuck Spezzano. We talked about how we took this course with him, and so let's just dive in. There we go. So all of us start in our relationships before we start that, I'm going to interrupt myself again.
No, I'm laughing with you. I'm laughing with you.
Or with some other people.
With other people, yes.
Okay. This model can be applied to relationship, can also be applied to your life at work, can also be applied to yourself in your own personal growth and development. So today we're going to specifically focus on relationship, but I know in other contexts I have talked about, how it fits with work or friendships or your own health and well-being. So just in case I go off track.
And the thing is that life is about relationships, right? I mean, right now, of course, this group that we're going to be building is about the intimate relationships, but there's a relationship with our parents, a relationship with our work, how we interact with possibly our colleagues, our friends, all of that. Like this model kind of encompasses all of that.
So do you want to introduce dependence?
You are more than we can start.
Okay. I might be talking a lot more than Spezzano on this because I just really love it.
And
so interject.
Yeah, and this is normal anyway. She does talk a lot more than me.
Okay.
And that's how this relationship has worked.
That's true. If you talk too much, no one would listen to me. Yeah, I guess that's true. Spezzano has a theory. There can only be one peacock in a relationship. Oh, see, my sister said, who is the peacock? Right. So he has a theory that says there can only be one peacock in the relationship. The peacock is the person that needs a lot of attention and likes it to be about them. That's me.
Yeah.
Sometimes, often, the peacock is the extrovert, like the person who likes to be out and in the world and being a shining star. And then the other person.
Yeah, and it kind of get in that supporting role. Now, I should say there are times where I am the peacock. So there have been events in the past where I've led for like work or kind of in my volunteer capacity where I step up, and it's all about Syra kind of coming in from a support perspective. So Sim wrote like it's about IT related. Yeah, sometimes it's when it's technology related, I have to be the star. Or when it's other things that are right, like this is something that I'm running as an event.
So being able to kind of
yeah,
pass over the spotlight when it's needed, but the point is that you're not competing, right? Both people aren't trying to be the star. That another way of thinking about it is what I use with my clients is like the butterfly and the plant, right? You need that person who's grounded and solid and rooted to kind of that steady, stable. And then the person who's going to flit around and do things in the world, right? And come back and rest here. And most of the time it'll be, this is the peacock. And then sometimes you'll switch roles once in a while. But generally speaking, the couples we've seen that make it, like for the long haul, they both know who the peacock is. So,
and this is just a theory.
He made it up out of his own life watching
I believe
other
I
people.
made it up. And
maybe there's a real theory.
Maybe there's
stealing some.
Exactly. But I am willing to be proven wrong. So
yeah, we have not yet met a couple that's happily together for the long term where both people are peacocks. There's a lot of tension when both people are peacocks. Not that you can't make it work, but
we'll talk about it in the model.
Okay, yeah, let's go to the model. Okay, dependent. So we start with dependence, and what that is at the beginning of a relationship, it's really about them, right? So it's about what we start with needs. We need to feel loved. We need to feel seen. We need to feel appreciated. We need information. What are your intentions in this relationship? There's a lot of needs, and our needs are relying on the other person to do something, right? So we can't just like do it for ourselves when we're first starting. We need that kind of feedback, and the other person's yeses or nos makes a big impact. So I think about when we were kind of connecting, and so every time I send a message, I'm like waiting for like what's he gonna say, right? And what he's gonna say is gonna affect my mood, and it's gonna affect my day. And I mean, at the beginning it was just luxurious, it's amazing, right? But I remember this one. Do you remember that time when you were staying at my dad's and we had that late night fight? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll tell you the stories. Can I tell the story?
Sure. Never held you back before, so yeah, go ahead.
It's because we're recording this.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Okay, so the story is so when Spezzano first moved to Canada, we weren't married yet. Oh yeah, can't be two captains, exactly. That's right. So when we first got married, he was staying with my dad at his house, and I was staying with my mom and siblings at my mom's house. And we were from kind of a traditional Pakistani families where there's no way we're going to live together before we get married. It's like not even an option, right? So he was staying with my dad, I was staying with my mom in that year while we organized for our wedding. And one night we were talking on the phone, and I hung up on him because I was mad about something, and I just hung up the phone. And then I felt bad, and then I called him back and he wouldn't pick up. And I called him back and he wouldn't pick up. And I called him back and I texted him and he wouldn't reply. And it was just like, he just wasn't going to respond to me. And I felt this like crazy fear coming in me, like, oh no, what have I done? Like, have I just ended the relationship because I hung up the phone? And it was just like, and I couldn't sleep. It was 2 a.m. I went in, I woke up my mom, and I was like, Mom, this happened. And she's like, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to go over there. And she's like, okay, go. Just call me when you get there. So I drove in my car like 2:30 a.m. and then I didn't have a key, and my dad's house it was an apartment building, and it was a really like sketchy part of town, but somehow I like followed someone else in, and I got in and got to the door, and somehow it was open because my dad never leaves his door unlocked. I don't know if you unlocked it. And then I like went into his room, so sorry I did that. And he just said simply this, he said, don't act like a child if you want to be with me. And I was like, dun, 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 because that's how I'd always been in relationships. It was like, I'd throw tantrums, right? And like, he better, and then I'd wait for the sorry, and he wasn't going to do that. That's my side of the story. And the reason I'm talking about it here is because I needed him to say the right thing so that I could be okay, right? Until I went there. And so when he said that didn't make me feel okay. That made me feel worse. But I had to like go away and think about it, and like talk to my sister about it, talk to my mom about it, and just really, okay, maybe I have to be different in relationship. But lots of needs. It was all dependent on how he responded to me. Do you want to say anything about your side of that story? Is there anything?
No, I think I wasn't picking up the phone because I had an early morning work thing I had to get to at 5 a.m. So I was sleeping. Like,
son?
No, it wasn't like I wasn't even
all
paying
these
attention
years,
to the phone.
I thought it was because you were teaching me a lesson. And you're telling me this right now?
I thought you knew, but okay. We talked about it. I was sleeping for work.
Well, sometimes we talk about things and then I forget. So it's possible that we talk. Okay, anyway. Needs. That was to demonstrate needs. Let's move to the next thing, which is hurt. When our needs are not met at some point in the relationship, we're going to go through what Chuck Spezzano, he actually calls it heartbreak, right? And so, and it doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is over. It means like something happens that breaks our heart. So in that example, him not calling me back or picking up my calls, which now I know had nothing to do with anything, created heartbreak in me and like terror and trauma and pain, right? And there's, I mean, that's one example. There's been lots of examples where there's, yeah, see, someone was waiting for your punchline. There was no punchline.
There is no
The
punchline.
punchline is I overreacted,
Yeah.
which is kind of a normal thing in our
Well,
relationship, to be honest. Oh.
I didn't say that.
Mhm.
So the hurt part is a crucial stage. I mean, we go through and kind of got demonstrated. I'm like, I think we talked about this before that I was sleeping. Like that's why the phone wasn't being answered. But Sarah does have a tendency not to pay attention to some.
No. I'm with you when you're saying it.
Yeah.
But then my life happens.
Yeah.
And then I forget.
And then you just go back to the moment.
Yeah.
In your story, which is fine.
Which has to change.
Yeah.
I know. I'm working on it.
So, but the hurt part, it's an interesting thing is that the hurt is mostly created because of our stories that we also create that go along with that, right? And from we make up a story like, oh, he's gonna leave me, and yeah, there was tension. I'm not especially in that story, there was tension. It wasn't about like, well, yeah, I'm just gonna up and just get out and leave and break it off, right? But there's an additional layer of story that got created about like, oh, if he doesn't pick up my phone by the morning, it's over, right? Like, and the stories add to that hurt part.
Right.
And that, yeah.
And there are people who spend their, oh, see, someone says forgetting by mistake is okay. Thank you. I have a fan club. I'm not going to probably use your names, even though I know you, just because we're recording. So if I'm not calling you by name, that's fine. Okay, so there's people who spend their entire adult life in hurt and heartbreak. And those are people, we use the term the victim mentality, right? Like, oh, this bad thing happened to me. And, oh, why do I have such bad luck? And it's so hard. And you might know people like that. And it gets grating after a while, right? Because it's like nothing good ever happens. And I'm always kind of deflated and broken. And there are people who spend their entire adult lives in needs. And they're needy and clingy. And you know those people, right? They're hard to be around. It's like always needing something. They always want to take something from the people around them. So what's happening if you get stuck in those places is because you're not kind of evolving your consciousness through the stages. Now, before we get into all the different parts, I want you to know you can be in different places in different areas of your life. So you might be in, for example, if you started a new job, you're likely in needs at your job, right? But you might be somewhere else in your relationship or somewhere else in your sibling relationship or with your mother-in-law or whatever. So you can be in different places. After hurt. So how do we get through, right? How do we get from needs, out of needs into hurt, out of hurt into the next thing? Well, if you think of that side of the mountain, it looks like, well, if you think of it as a mountain, that side is the climb, right? And so what do you do when you're climbing? You just got to have stamina and you got to keep going, right? You got to just keep pushing and keep trying and not give up. And so with hurt, we have to kind of keep moving and keep trying and not stay there, but be willing to look at what is the next thing and be willing to move beyond the hurt. When we move beyond the hurt, inevitably we get to judgment. So judgment is where we say, oh, I know what the problem is. You're the problem. If you just change, then I'll be fine, right? And I'll feel so much better if you just change. And there's, I can't tell you the amount of times people have come to me for therapy and said, like, he's doing this or she's doing this and blah, blah, blah. Did you just move your hand away from me? I was like trying to be affectionate.
I thought you were.
No, I was
like trying to put your hand somewhere.
No, I was trying to like touch you. And you're like.
We are running a webinar.
We're also having a life.
We are.
Yeah. Now I lost my train.
Judgment.
So I just did a demonstration. So it's like if he just does what I want him to, then everything will be fine. And it's hard. Like it's hard for me to catch myself in that, right? And say like, oh, you need to change because that'll make me feel better. Because the problem is then the other person is holding all the power. If they don't change, you're going to continue to feel crappy forever. And And there are people, again, who spend their entire adult lives stuck in judgment, where it's always someone else's fault, right? It's always this person did this to me and that person did that to me. And if only this had happened with this situation, then I would have had a chance or whatever. Anything to add?
Yeah, no, one thing I want to add about this side, because it feels a lot less in control, right? We'll talk about a little bit of that. But and a lot of people where when I've worked with them or I've attended different groups, they talk about, I don't really want to deal with the hurt. I don't want to deal with the judgment. I just want to move to the next step. And it's that it is important that we go through these stages. We identify our needs. We point out where we got hurt,
Why?
even if it's even if it's our story, and we acknowledge our judgments, right? Because otherwise those things just are still, it's like it's like this heavy ball that we're just carrying with us. It'll just be there, and you're like, why can't I run this 40-yard dash? Like a sports analogy here. It's like, why can't I run this? Well, you're running with a 80-pound ball. Like that's attached to you. It'll be a little bit harder. You might be able to do it. It'll just be that much harder, right? So for us, it's an important piece to acknowledge our hurts and to talk about it. It's not about blaming. And yes, we're going to get to in judgment. It feels like we're blaming them. We're blaming somebody. We're blaming ourselves possibly. But it's important that we at least acknowledge it before we move forward. And the idea isn't to get stuck here, right? Like, and what Cyrus talked about, and we'll talk about how we kind of move forward. But the focus isn't about being stuck in any of these places. Like, oh, I just have to stay in judgment for a couple of weeks. No, now we go through these cycles. We'll get through it within 5 minutes sometimes. Right? It takes practice, but that's one thing I did want to point out. It's like a lot of folks try to bypass it because it's uncomfortable for many people to feel hurt. It's uncomfortable for many people to judge others. It feels like we're bad people, right? It feels like we're bad people that are judging somebody. Like, oh, and a lot of religious texts and talk about don't judge, forgive, and don't judge and forgive. It feels like we're bad people when we're judging. If that makes sense.
So how do we get over the top of the mountain, right? Because we don't want to stay here. We want to move. And so we want to move into the next thing, which is independence. Independence is where you start taking your power back, where it's not about them being in charge of your happiness or sadness. You say, well, maybe it's about me. And most people who are in the personal development world don't want to stay stuck in judgment, right? We do want to move on and see what else is there beyond judgment. And so we say, okay, if I were to take accountability, if I were to say that there's a part of me, like it can't be everybody else in the entire world that's wrong. Maybe I have something to do with it. We have to take that accountability. It's hard to do, but if we're willing to do that, then we move over to the other side and we start with control. In control, we get our life back. So in control, we start to feel more in control. We start to set boundaries, right? We start to ask for what we need. Another word here in control is also demands, right? We start stating our demands. What is it that I need from you? Or else I'm out of here, right? We actually start speaking and asking. And boundary setting is one of the critical components of human relationships in general, right? Because we're not really taught how to do that. And in our program with our couples group, we'll be looking at boundary setting and how we learn boundary setting and what to do about kind of moving through that. But anyway, this is where it starts, control. Now, what happens if I finally have control, but I'm in a relationship with another person? Well, inevitably, there's going to be a power struggle, right? Because I want it my way, he wants it his way, I want it my way, they want it their way, I want it, and it's like this tug of war thing that happens. And isn't this just like needs? So that's a great question. So I'm guessing your question is, isn't control just like needs? Not really, because in needs, you're waiting for the other person to do it, or you're going to remain unhappy. When you're setting boundaries, it's like, this is what I'm asking of you. Otherwise, the relationship needs to end.
And control is about, I'm going to take it, right? And so one of the changes that we experience as human beings is if we've been on kind of the dependent side of our lives for a while, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're learning how to set boundaries. It actually jars other people, like, whoa, like what? You're asking of this meeting now? Like we've been doing this for 30 years, right? But it's like now you're making these demands. And so it's more it feels more like we're wanting to take, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the person's
well,
question.
and it's also one of the ways I would see it is it's like, oh wait, I'm messing around here. One of the ways to think about it is with needs, you feel like you're in a deflated position. With needs, it's like small. With control, you have power. You feel like you have a voice. You feel like you're not like, please, you're like, excuse me, this is what, so it's a different energy, though the request might be exactly the same. So hopefully that's clearer. Are there degrees of boundaries, or are most boundaries deal breakers? That's a great question. Do you want to go answer them at the end?
Because you said.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll come back to that. Keep going. Thank you. See, that's how I said it. Okay, power struggle. I will come back to your question about boundaries because I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Okay, so after power struggle, and power struggle is where you'll see couples fighting, right? So there's a lot of kind of anger and animosity and tension, and that might be out loud because they're like shouters, or that might be underground because they're more passive aggressive, more
like
ice freeze out each other.
Yeah, it's like tug of war, right? Like I'm gonna push this way, and you'll pull. Yeah.
Right. So, I was reading the questions again. Power struggle. So that's the power struggle. And power struggle can be extremely painful, but what I find is most couples don't come to therapy in power struggle. That's where they need to come, right? To learn tools to work through the struggle, but they're just too busy fighting to realize that there's a problem that somebody else might be able to support them with. Because what happens after power struggle, now this is the area of the triangle that Spezzano and I live in a lot. And before we learned what it was, there were many times where I thought, like, is this the marriage for me? Like, I don't know, because we're in this space and it doesn't feel good. And I was never taught that this is actually a very normal part of intimate relationship. And it is the dead zone. The dead zone is where suddenly you don't care. Like, you're not angry, you're not irritated, you just don't really feel. And it's people say things like, I've fallen out of love, right? Or I mean, we're compatible, but there's no passion there. That's the kind of language people use.
We're what, two ships sailing,
passing in the night. That's what I always say to him. We're like two ships passing in the night, right? It's like there's no fight, like nothing's wrong, but there's also nothing right.
There's nothing connecting us.
Right.
There's nothing, at least my learning has been that as humans, we always want to kind of go to the next step and grow. And it's like, from a relationship perspective, it's like we're just stuck at this level. And now it was exciting to get to this level. Now I want to get to the next level of the relationship, and we're just not moving, and we just feel stuck in that.
Anything else? Dead zone. So yeah, and this is where marriages end. This is where partnerships end, because people think, well, I guess I've just fallen out of love with them. Like, people say things like that.
This is where sometimes infidelities happen.
Affairs, yeah, because what happens is there's nothing here, but this other person, wow, they bring me alive. They make me feel beautiful. They make me feel wanted. They make me feel successful. And so what I'm not getting here, I'm getting somewhere else.
They're filling the needs.
Right.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that, so Spezzano and I, sometimes our eyes wander. Be honest, I'm not sure if that happens to other people, but sometimes I'll see someone and be like, that is a tasty drink right there, and I'll just be like, ooh, or he'll be like that. And when that happens, when I start seeing my eyes are wandering, either because of a physical, like, stranger, or a friend that suddenly I want to spend more, be more emotionally intimate with, when I feel myself kind of drifting, then one of my teachers said, if you see something wrong in the relationship, you're the one that's called to bring it, right? So if I'm finding that my eye is wandering, then what I realize is, like, I'm not feeling attraction right? Physical attraction. And so then I say, okay, how can I make myself feel more physically attractive rather than waiting for him to change and try to feel physically attractive? So it's kind of a different way of looking at it, right? Because I'm saying, I'm not going to make the problem about him. I'm going to own it and say, what is this about me? But that doesn't happen in the dead zone. That happens in the next phase.
Yeah, and part of it is, again, I think sometimes we get questions here is when we say, well, why do I always have to do something?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because remember, this side of the mountain, right, we're taking accountability. This is about me stepping up and saying, okay, what do I need to bring here?
Great.
And yeah, sometimes you might be the only one bringing stuff to the table all the time, right? And we'll kind of get to that kind of that flat part of the mountain here. But as we're kind of going through this side, right, it's important to remember that accountability matters in relationship, right? I mean, I can of course ask for what I need, but I'm only responsible for what I'm bringing.
And you have to ask. You can't. The person cannot read your mind. That is something I learned very early. Like, Spezzano's not a mind reader.
No, I've never been, and I think I told her a few times.
Neither are most people a mind reader, right? But it's like they should anticipate our needs. They should know what we need, and it's like maybe, but if you never say anything, and if they ask you what's wrong and you say nothing, well, then you're not really communicating your needs, right? And these are all symptoms of the dead zone, where you feel like you're missing each other, you're not connecting with each other. There's a way through the dead zone. Where we want to get to is interdependence. Oops, something happened. Yeah, anyway, both came at the same time. So interdependence is now about us. And the way to interdependence is commitment. Now, remember, when we were in judgment, the last thing we wanted to do was be accountable, right? Because that means I have to make it like about me. The last thing you want to do in the dead zone is commit, because it's been so dead. Like, what am I committing? There's nothing there. But what we found is when you actually put both feet back in and say, I'm here 100. Do you want to talk about your percent thing?
The 100%, 100%?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my pet peeves is when in relationships, or you hear people talk about, this is 50-50. Like, we're bringing this, like, it's a 50-50 commitment, 50, I bring in 50% of the money or 50% of the housework, whatever. I call it bullshit on that. And just one thing for people, if you're going to be joining us for a program, I do curse. I sometimes it's a Chicago in me, sometimes it's just for effect, but it does come out. In any case, so that really is the 50-50 is a mentality that we need to let go of in commitment. I can only bring 100% of me. I cannot control as much as I want to. I can control myself, or I work on controlling myself, but I cannot control another person and how much commitment they're going to bring. I can only bring 100% of me, right? And I think that's the important thing as we go through the program, is we're going to be talking a lot about that commitment. It's like, what is your role? Or in the questions that I ask, like, what is my role in this? What am I being asked to do? What can I do differently? Mm-hmm. Maybe there isn't anything else I can do, and that's okay. And I just kind of put that aside, and I say that truth, but I can only bring 100% of me.
And bringing 50% isn't enough. Bringing 99% is way harder than bringing 100%. It just is, right? Because 99% you're like, okay, I'm here, almost totally, but then you always see, the thing is with commitment, there's no back door, right? There's no back burner, there's no back door. So what back burner means in my little world is the other people I could be with if I wasn't with him, right? These fantasies that we have, like, oh, well, if this doesn't work out, maybe I would pursue that. That's called the back burner. We have to clear off our back burner. That's really, really, really important, because otherwise you're not really here, right? There's a part of you that's still, and then the back door is the idea of like, oh, I could just leave if I wanted to. Got to close and lock that back door. Like, one of the things we talk about is divorce is not an option, right? If we're going to do this, if we're actually going to commit to each other, then we're going to work through shit. We went to a course to figure out shit because I sometimes curse because
I've been rubbing off on her.
Because we weren't the back door was not an option. It was off the table. And I find when couples make this commitment that the back burner is clear and the back door is locked, well then commitment will take, okay, so this is what happens when you commit. One of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to go to the next level of intimacy, connection, love, friendship, or both of you are going to get really clear that your work here is done, right? That you've come to the end of your journey and you're parting ways without a lot of drama. Now, so what's the difference between that and the back door? I'll tell you, it's a mutual decision and there's not a lot of drama, right? So it's just this kind of knowing that both people will have that, I think this is over. And in my work, 15 years of therapy with people who are in difficult relationships, I've seen the separation thing happen once. Every other couple that's been willing to fully commit end up moving forward. Actually, twice, I guess, with the recent, twice, right? Where you fully commit and you say, yep, we got to move our separate ways. Most people, when they fully commit, because the thing is, I can learn my life lessons here or somewhere else, but those are lessons I'm going to have to learn with Spezzano or someone else. And one of the things that one of my teachers taught me is this phrase, and it really helps: this or something better. So when we're in a funk, I say, to the powers that be, this or something better, which means he's got to evolve or I've got to evolve, or maybe we're done, but something better's got to happen.
And most of the time, at least from my experience, when I've been able to commit, or recommit and recommit and recommit, I find that it's a part of me that was still in need. Like I was depending on Sarah for a need to be fulfilled, or I was judging her for something. And I'm like, oh, wow, I thought I'd gone past that. Okay, I need to let go of that. And that alone, right? Like that commitment and that clarity, she didn't have to change anything. Like it just, because I was able to clear that path, I was able to let go of that 80-pound boulder that's attached to me. I'm able to now run my race with her.
Because people will ask me, well, what if I'm committing but they're not? Well, here's the thing. So part of my training was in systems, right? So family systems. And what we know about systems is when one person in the system changes, the whole system changes, right? Because the way that we were doing things before no longer works, right? And so yes, as you change, if one person fully commits, the whole system rebalances itself. So it doesn't mean, because often on the journey of life, sometimes he's ahead of me and he's just up there doing his thing, living his life, and I'm catching up.
Most of the times I'm ahead of it, but we're not.
No, I said that first to because it's the opposite.
No? Oh, okay.
Often in my experience, in heterosexual relationships, at least, it's often the woman that's leading, right? I'm not sure, I don't have enough information about same-sex relationships yet. I'm still working on that, but I know with heterosexual, it's often the woman that's leading on the path of personal development. Not always, but often. And so, I could be looking and being like, well, why is he not catching up? Why, but there will be times when he's ahead and I'm behind, and that's okay. It's just one of us that needs to commit. We both don't need to in that exact moment, just one of us. Somebody's got to be holding the fort. And if it's not him, it better be me. And if it's not me, it better be him. And so it means we have to step up for each other in a way that we weren't doing independence or in independence. Right. Independence, I look down on the other. Independence, I'm looking up at them like, oh, they're so great. I'm so lucky. Why did they pick me? We're doing that thing. In independence, we're saying they owe me, or I'm the boss. Both of those are imbalanced, right? Because somebody's putting a comment, this is so mind-blowing, right? Seems so basic in common sense and also mind-blowing, because we don't actually study relationship. Most of us don't study relationship, right?
I went to school for a lot of things. Relationship wasn't.
You never talked about it. Did you ever take a course in high school about how to be in a long-term committed relationship? Nope. They just expected you to figure it out. And if you think about who you learned that from, it was likely your parents and other adults in your life. And for many of us, they're not in relationships that we would want to emulate anyway. For many of, not for all of us. Some people had wonderful role models, but some of us did not. And so we're watching this, we're saying, okay, that's how you act in a long-term relationship, but I don't want to feel like how you feel, right? Someone saying, I can vouch for this, and I acted on Dr. Cyrus' same advice to me a few months ago, and it was life-changing. Thank you. I think you're talking about that commitment, right? That full commitment when you do it. And this, as this person's writing, you can add in the box a little bit more if you want, but that piece around the fear of commitment, right? Thinking, well, if I commit, I'm giving, like, does that mean I'm just giving up and they win? That's independence language, right? Independence language is I win, you lose. But when we're in interdependence, it changes.
Well, yeah. So I think that's the language, right? Like dependence is you win, I lose. Independence is about I win, you lose. And interdependence is now about figuring out a way to get win-win, right? Like we talk about this.
And not even win-win, but we win.
Yeah, we win.
Right? It's not win-win, it's a we.
Yeah.
Now we're a we.
Yeah. And one of the things is in the, those of us that have kind of taken like leadership courses, like business leadership courses, they talk about, right? Like, oh yeah, we got to come up with this win-win situation so the other person feels, it's like, yeah, so we talk about it there, but at home, like even with my kids, it's like, well, they better respect me, which means I win, they lose, right? Or, okay, yeah, let them do whatever they want, so they win. Like, it's like at home, it just feels like, okay, I can't practice those philosophies at home. It's the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. That this isn't a like what really in those business leadership courses, what they're talking about is don't make it a transaction. Right? Like it's about the relationship, build that relationship so everyone feels happy at the end of the deal. Well, this can't be a transaction either, right? It can't be, well, I do this and then you do this.
Right, and some people try to make it like that, right? Like, I'll pay for this and you pay for that, or I'll do this chore and you do that chore. And then it's never balanced, right? There's never going to be like a line down the middle where you're saying, this is what your responsibilities are and this is what my responsibilities are, because that's not a union, right? That's not a joint life. That's two people living in parallel, which you can do, but it's so much more fulfilling to be in that union, because the two people living in parallel, that's two independent people. Right? And you can only get to a certain level of intimacy and closeness when you're both just kind of walking, doing your own thing and not really connecting with each other.
Yeah, it's about that trust. And now we're not going to talk about whether you should have separate accounts and whatnot. That's not. No, I mean, it's not the physical accounting piece, but right, like when you're making those decisions, or if I am making that decision about, well, I did this and as desire do this, I'm keeping an accounting book. Right? And the accounting book is only kept so I can reconcile it at some point, right? It's not kept for the sake of sanity. Like I want to be able to say, look, you didn't meet your needs. You still owe me, right? Like, so, and there's also this path of, am I leaving myself a back door? Do I trust this relationship enough where I am going to be so vulnerable, especially for those of us that have issues with finances and any of those things that we may be struggling with? Right? Like as growing up, it's like, am I going to be vulnerable enough to trust my finances with somebody else? Finance is one of them. It could be home life. It could be anything, right? Like I'm just going to be the support person and let this person be the support.
My goals and dreams.
My goals and dreams, right? Like, am I willing to share this? Mm-hmm. Am I willing to trust this person to make sure that they're going to support me in my dreams? And that's the hard, like it's hard. It's hard to make those commitments. It's difficult to commit in those moments, in a lot of moments, and it requires us to recommit. I know most of the times I am perfect, but there are times I have failed where I have to come back and like, wow, I have to recommit. No, I'm not perfect. I thought I was.
80%.
80%.
Like,
you take that 80-20 rule.
Are you getting shy with public displays of affection?
Yeah, because I think somebody else is on.
He's from a very conservative family.
Not just that, somebody else is on that,
that knows you?
That knows you and us, family.
Oh, my sister? She doesn't care. I'm sure she'll type it in the chat box. Like, go for it. Okay, so let's get back to our triangle. So how do we get shame? Oh, she says shame. Oh, okay, fine. Shame, PDA. Oh, look, just kidding. I love it. Okay. Okay, now commitment. All right. So remember when I was talking about the mountain, going up the mountain of dependence, and you just have to keep going and you have to have resilience and you can't give up? Well, the independent side is more like a ski hill, right? And with the ski hill, the best way to get through that is to just let go and to just let go and to just let go and to just let go. Let go of control, let go of knowing, let go of being the boss. Just let go, let go, let go, and trust. Right? That's the way you get through independence. So if you find yourself in control or power struggle or dead zone, you're letting go, you're letting go, you're letting go. And when you get to dead zone, it's recommit. Then we get to the juicy part. Now, this is the part that when you get here, it's like, I don't know, like eating chocolate ice cream for the first time, or like, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I mean? Like that first time that you did that thing, like that. It's just like a whole different, I don't even have words, as you can see. Well, let me use the words that are on this chart then. Partnership. Partnership means I now see you as the same as me, right? We're in this together. I'm not looking up at you. I'm not looking down at you. I'm looking across and I see that you're a person who has some life experiences, some beliefs, some whatever, but you're just trying just as hard as I am, right? You're walking your own path and you've had your own influences, and we can be teammates for each other, right? We're not on opposite teams anymore like we were in independence. We're now on the same team. It's like we go from looking at each other like this to coming side by side. And this is actually something we talk about with, again, people in relationship struggle, is that here, let's do a demonstration. So if you go like this, right? In independence, in power struggle, yeah, we don't hold hands. We're like this, right? And like, he's the problem, right? Like,
that's what's happening.
Yeah,
I'm trying
like,
to push you away.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
like a little bit.
You don't want it?
So it's like he's the problem, right? But whereas in partnership, it's like we turn and we're side by side, and now we're looking together at the problem, right? The problem might be our lack of communication, or our problem might be that we're not, being intimate as much as we'd like to, or the problem might be that our children are driving us bananas, but he's not the problem and I'm not the problem. That's what happens in interdependence. Then now you get two minds on your problems, right? It's not like my life and his life, it's our life. And that's not to say that you should never do anything away from your partner. Absolutely. You should have like your own friends and your own interests and your own hobbies. Absolutely. And have a place where there's partnership and union. So that's the first thing that happens when we get into interdependence. The next thing is leadership. So, Spezzano was talking earlier about how at work they have these leadership courses. There's many people who are trying to be leaders in their families or even at places of work from a place of control, right? So do it my way, this is what I want. And that's how they lead. There are people who are doing leadership through judgment, which is if you just change yourself, we'll all be fine, right? And that, and think about, I want you to write in the chat box, when you have a leader who's in judgment or control, how does that make you feel? Whether that's in your family system or at work or wherever you are, I'm the control leader. Yeah, so the person who said, I'm the control leader, we want to hear from your partner. How do they feel? We feel inferior, right? Yeah, we feel less than. We feel oppressed. These are great words. We feel like I don't want to listen. I'm not going to listen, or they're not going to listen to me. Looking in.
Productive.
Yeah, it's a little tyrannical. It's not productive. Can you repeat the question? So the question is, when you're in a situation where somebody's a leader to you, like a boss or a parent or somebody's in a leadership position, and they're coming from judgment or control, how does that make you feel? So type that in the chat box. We got some good dialogue going here. So feeling like it's not productive. It feels you feel belittled. Yeah. Absolutely. So belittled is when they're coming from judgment because they're looking down on you, right? You feel like F them, good one. Yeah, you start saying F them. It's combative, right? It brings out the fight, right? When somebody's treating you that way. And so there's ways to be a leader in your life without making people feel small, without fighting with people, without having people feel like F you or you having the same response. There's a way to do that. And when you're in leadership here, you don't actually ask for leadership. What happens is the people around you start looking at your life and saying, you've got something, right? Like, what do you have Like, why is it working so nicely for you? So that could be in your finances, that could be in your personal relationship, that could be in your job, your career, that could be in your health, your physical health and well-being, right? So they'll look at you and say, you're doing something you have something that I want. How do I learn from you?
Yeah, and you become a leader without a title, right? Like, and
Right.
that, something we talk about at work a lot. It's like, you're a leader, you don't need a title for that. Well, we need to get to a point where of course, I'm willing to step up as a leader, but am I coming from a place where somebody will actually work with me, right? And not allow me to lead them, but say, okay, I'm willing to join you on this journey.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the comments is, when we're both leaders, we tackle the issues together. Absolutely. And often your relationship can become a model for other people, right? That they look at you and say, what's happening here? And so without you asking or trying, people will start kind of asking you about, and think about some areas in your life where you feel like you might be in leadership right now. Maybe type those in the chat box. If you think about your own life, where is it that it's just naturally happened? Good one. I find it most interesting that I'm a leader in the workplace and a micromanager at home. So micromanagement is judgment. That's where micromanaging lives, and control, kind of around that top of the triangle. And so if you're in micromanagement, then what you want to do is let go, let go, let go, let go. And some people who are micromanagers will say, well, if I let go, everything will fall apart, right? I can't let go because the fact that I hold on so tight is why we function.
Right.
I've lived that. I know
And
that.
we have to build that trust, right? We have to, and yeah, things might fall apart, but then other people actually have space to become leaders and step up, right? And to start picking up those pieces as well. And so, yeah, so absolutely. And there are places we find ourselves like, I can do this so easily at work. Why can't I do it at home?
Mm-hmm.
Or I can do it at home, but I can't do it at work, right? And so it doesn't, uh, and again, I think that goes back to the point earlier, is that you can be at different stages, right? And then and because you know it works somewhere, you actually have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know it works at, like, I'm able to do it at work. So what am I doing different at work? I might be trusting them, right? Or I might have a different skill set that I need to bring home.
Yeah.
Right. And I need to look at myself like, why am I doing this at home? Because our home lives, a lot of us don't look, and I know I was guilty of this in the past, is that in the past, I didn't want to look at my past, right? And how that was also how I grew up, and the demands on me, how that impacted how I raise my children,
Mm-hmm.
or how I act as a husband, right? These are things that have kind of just been ingrained in me. And so now I'm working through those, but I have to, again, take accountability and responsibility and trust that the other person will be okay while I'm working on myself.
Great question. If everything falls apart when you let go, how long do you wait until the other will pick it up? So let's talk about when I was depressed, because everything fell apart, right? So I went through this depressive episode about 4 years ago, and everything fell apart. And I was, somebody mentioned micromanager. I was the micromanager in the family, like everything from the baseboards dusted to everybody's laundry in their rooms, like folded in a particular way, KonMari method, for those who know what that means. Like, I was so precise with my home and my family, the schedules, like everything, lunches, everything. And then I felt ill. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that I even chose to let it fall apart. It just fell apart. And so what happened then from your perspective? I know how I think it went down, but.
Yeah, I mean, again, and from my perspective, these are things like, when I looked at that situation, I would be going to work. And I know there were many days at work where I wasn't even paying attention, because my focus was, am I going to come home, and are my kids going to have a mother? Right? Like, it's like I couldn't just not go to work. I tried changing work schedules so I could work from home, and tried building all of those things just so that I could at least be there, right? But like, I couldn't fix, and I think this is the hard part. I tried really hard to fix Ira. And then quickly enough, I figured out I couldn't. There was nothing I could do. And the letting go part, that was the hard thing. And yeah, it took almost 2 years of letting go and just trusting that she will be okay. And I had to come to terms, and this was the hard part, I had to come to terms with, she might be okay not here. And that, like when we go through that, and you know, like we're talking about commitment, and this for me, this model is a spiritual path, right? Is that I couldn't control it. This was a lesson in deep commitment and learning to understand that I can trust, and everything will be okay. It might not be okay the way I want to look at it, but it would be okay. And so from a support perspective, like what did I do? Like, okay, if I couldn't support her, it's like, yeah, I mean, again, for me, it was a recommitment of, okay, what do I need to be doing
For your own self.
for my own self to make sure that I'm supported through this, right? And so I did a men's group, and I did all of those things to make sure that I was okay.
You joined the men's
I
group.
joined the men's group.
Yeah.
Like I joined men's group. I started learning more and more, kind of, okay, recommitting to this path that I kind of was wobbly on, and I recommitted, right? And I'm like, okay, I have to be a better father. So I started taking them to school, figuring out my work schedule. I didn't tell my work people what was going on at home, but I'm like, okay, things have changed. I need to be home a little bit more. I started taking, and there were many times I was in the school grounds taking meetings, picking up the kids, and the clients are asking me, hey, what's that noise in the background? I'm like, you're just gonna have to deal with it, man. Like I'm here. And you know, I didn't lose my work quality. What I'm saying is that I recommitted to myself, making sure that I was okay and I was able to step up. I'm not saying those things helped tremendously, like just the kind of the logistics part of it, but like again, showing up.
But the message you're sending, right? The message you're sending is, I'm going to do what it takes. Now, I have a question. I have a question for the chat box. So the example that we're giving is where, you know, we didn't have a choice, where I let go, not because I wanted to, but I just didn't have a choice. What about if someone in the situation where you're letting go because you've just had enough and you don't want to, you know, you don't want to do it all yourself anymore? Then how long does it take for the other? I think that's the question. How long does it take for the other person to step up? Like, how long did it take you when it was not a choice?
It took me, like I say, almost a couple of years to kind of keep on working. Like, I think the first year I was just trying to fix it, right? Like, no, you can't take this medication. Like this, no, right? Like all of those things that needed to be, like, I was just trying to fix. I was in control, trying to power struggle with God, really, as well.
Yeah, someone said letting go is letting go.
Yeah. And so from it's hard, right? Like I can't speak to say, okay, how long does it take? How long does, because, you know, I mean, okay, so like that, those 2 years, as difficult as they were, when I look back now, it was very quick. Yeah, you know, like when I was going through it, I'm like, when is this fucking shit gonna end? Sorry. Like, when is this gonna end? Right? Like, enough of this. And I even told you, like, enough, like, I need you to snap out of it. Like, right? Like, because I was scared, and it just kept on going and going. So yeah, and in that span of time, it was difficult. But when I now look back to those 2 years,
it's like a drop.
It's a drop in the bucket, but it's also like I can see my growth because of those 2 years as well. So it's hard for me to say, okay, how long do you wait? Do you wait a year? Do you wait a month? You know, I think that's a situation. I'm going to say, take accountability and responsibility, kind of go and say, okay, what am I willing to allow?
And we never actually had a conversation about that. As much as we know, we never actually talked that through to say, okay, roles are changing. How do we need to support each other? What needs to be done? Because I was just like in bed, basically, without showering for months and months and months and months and months and months, right? And then putting on a face to go give a TED talk, right? Remember that? Oh my gosh. So my second TED talk, if you ever watch it online, it's something about, why people matter more than things. If you watch it, here's the secret. There's this one point in the talk where I just stop and there's this long, poignant pause. Yeah, actually forgot my speech. Because my mind was so messed up with my depression that I couldn't even, like, I was in a fog. And I had to get off that stage, and Spezzano had to take me straight to the hotel. I was, you know, my family like kind of came around me and took me to the hotel because I was not in a good space. But I know how to pose, right? I know how to fulfill my commitment. So I did that. but it was really, really difficult. And I remember the drive to Kamloops, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And Faizan, the whole way, he was just kind of coaching me and supporting me and like saying, you know what, if you get there, if you get on stage and you don't want to do it, walk away. Like, it's okay. It's going to be fine.
And I think there's a question earlier, again, one of the value systems that we had talked about, right, was we're not letting go of each other.
Right.
We might fail, we might suck at it, we might be horrible at how we act sometimes, but we're not letting go of each other. So that value system kept me going, right? Like, it wasn't something where I was just going to give up and say, okay, she's in the depression, I need to get out of this relationship. It's too much. Like, so I never got to that point. But again, that was something we had talked about. And so that's, again, what I'm going to say is accountability and responsibility to say, okay, let's define what our value systems are. Right. And I'm not saying that has to be your value system. Like, we're never going to separate. That's ours. Right. If that you want to make it yours, awesome, make it yours. But that, like, those decisions then help us decide how long we give somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the longer you've been together, the harder it is when one person starts to change, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're renegotiating things, and if you don't actually have a conversation, it can take a really long time.
Yeah.
So after leadership comes vision. So this is where we get into the more kind of spiritual elements of the triangle. So in leadership, you're busy, right? You're leading other people. People are learning from you. That's all happening. In vision, kind of look around at your life and everything looks fine. Like, things are fine, and things that are not fine, you're not too worried about because you kind of trust the process and you know it's going to be okay. In vision is where we now start stepping back and getting connected to what we're here to do. What's our, our core mission? What's our soul's journey? And so we start now getting guidance from another place, right? From our deepest self, or higher self, or however you understand that. And it's not just about our family and community, it's about the world, right? I start thinking about my neighbors. I start thinking about those people down the street. I start thinking about those people in that other province or that other continent or whatever. And suddenly my vision becomes one for the world, right? And the idea here is that as souls, our evolution is eventually to get back to oneness, to remember that we're all one. And vision helps us to get out of our own personal, like we used to, in university, we used to call it navel gazing, right? Where you're just like, oh, my problems, things are so hard, and just looking at your belly button. You look up and you say, wow, there's people out here. There's calls for help that I can answer out here, right? And so that's where vision happens, and you start getting really aligned. Leadership is really busy. Vision is very still, because now you're listening, you're building a meditation practice, you're doing those things to get aligned and really hear what you're here to do. And after vision comes mastery. So have people heard about The Secret? Type yes in the chat box if you've ever heard about The Secret or the Law of Attraction, any of that. Type yes if you've ever heard. So a couple people, 4 or 5 people. Okay. Oh yeah, here they come. Here come the yeses. Yeah. So you've heard about the Law of Attraction, The Secret. Yeah, quite a few people in our group. So what they talk about is that you can, with the right thinking and the right life acting, you can actually have the life you want without a lot of drama and without a lot of difficulty, right? That life can be easy. Have you ever met someone, someone says, yes, I know about it, but not my husband. Yeah. So, and again, right? It only takes one. So what mastery is about, have you ever met someone who they show up and they seem to have it all? Like, they've got the money and they've got the good health and they're beautiful and they're kind. Like, you actually want to be around them. They're in a loving relationship. They're doing work that they love. Have you ever met someone like that? Say yes if you have. Aw, my sister says me. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, a few people. I didn't say that so you could say, but yeah, right? It's like, yeah, people like that. People.
I guess we've been posing a lot if they think we're that.
Not anymore, dude. This is what it is. They've been watching this for like over an hour.
I know.
Faze. Oh, you're the one. Look, they named you.
See, yeah.
You're the one.
He has it together. Yeah. I've been holding it together for us.
But the point is,
that's not true.
Oh man. So the reason I ask you this is just to kind of get you thinking about role models, right? Who are people who actually, because the idea is if one can do it, all can do it.
Yeah.
If one human on the planet can achieve that, that means all of us have the potential for it, right? We just have to kind of get out of our way. And so that's where mastery is like where we've gotten out of our way and we're having this beautiful life that we've created, and it's easy. And we ask for something and it comes, and we ask for something and it comes. A couple of days ago, I was sitting in one of our chairs looking out at the lake, and I was just a bit chilly. I was like, oh, it'd be so nice to have a blanket, but I was too lazy to get up and get a blanket. Yesterday, we went to Superstore and we spent so much money that they gave us a free blanket. I got my blanket. To me, that's like a miracle, right? And interpreting things like that in our lives as miracles, that's when we get into mastery, right? Yeah, the universe listens, exactly, right? So being mindful about what we're asking for and how we're talking about our lives, all of that starts showing up in
and
mastery.
how we're interacting, and are we keeping our commitment. So like for us, I knew we were in vision and mastery, or I always know, and again, we go through these circles, right? So I know we end up in vision and mastery as a couple, and sometimes we like, okay, we're gonna go back through this phase again. But I know when we're in vision and mastery, it's when we're making changes, we do it quick. Like we decided to sell our place, and within a month, like within 2 weeks, our place was sold and we were here within a month. Like, so it's just that quick. Like I know when we're together, where our energies are kind of pulling towards the same direction when things like that happen, right? So I'm always now noticing like, oh, is there a little bit of a slowness, right? Like how we spent the day yesterday. I was like, okay, we're in the flow. But when I see any sort of struggle through that, I'm like, okay, something's off. And again, I don't say something's off with her. Sometimes I do in my head, but
you quickly correct.
Yeah, I quickly correct and say, no.
Cancel.
Wait, I need to look, like something's off. Am I showing up? Am I showing up fully? Am I keeping my commitments? All of those things, the questions that I ask myself.
So mastery could be a great place to land, right? And that's great. Like you've lived this life, you have what you want, you don't have to try very hard. But Chuck Spezzano, when he was creating this model, he comes from a transpersonal perspective as well. And he says, this life's journey isn't just about getting stuff, right? It's not just about getting whatever you ask for and having the dream job and the dream family. It's not about the stuff outside of you. It's actually a soul's journey. It's a spiritual journey. And it's a journey of purification or cleansing or whatever you want to call it, to get rid of those nasty layers of doubt and struggle and despair that not only we carry, but we've inherited from generations, right? Generations of men and women that have come before us that did struggle, right? That did have it hard, that didn't have the luxury to sit and think about their feelings. They didn't have, so we're carrying a lot of that on our shoulders. When we get to mastery, we've healed and we've let go of a lot of that. But in mastery, you can start to feel like you're God. Like you can have whatever you want. And so what he advises us in this place, if you want to go deeper, and you could land in mastery, and that could be a really fulfilling life. But if you want to go even beyond mastery, then you come to this inside of the triangle here. And to get around this corner here, what's required is faith. And so this is faith in something, like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Something greater than myself. However you understand that to be, that there's something greater than myself that's propelling my life forward. There's this other energy, not just my own mind and heart and personality. There's some other mystical part of this lived experience that I'm going to start exploring and connecting with. And there's people who say that they have a faith-filled life, but they're actually just in judgment or power struggle. And you might know people like that, right? They do all the right things to make it look like the spiritual people, but they haven't actually done the cleansing, the clearing work to be in a place of mastery and faith. And then once you get around this corner, this line inside, I didn't have room to write it on, but it's what Chuck calls radical dependence. So you can write that down. Radical, hopefully you've been like writing as we go. I don't know. I would if I was watching this, because I'm such a student. But inside is radical dependence. So in radical dependence, the way he describes it is, this is where you just fall into the river of life and it carries you. And you don't have to do anything, because you just get led to the next right thing and the next right thing. And you're coming now as a servant to humanity, right? You're coming to serve humanity, and you have everything that you need. You have all the money and the time and the energy and the right supports so that you can come to serve, which is what we really came for. And then once we get there, what we're trying, there's lots of stages inside, but that's not our focus for today. Eventually, we're trying to get to oneness. And so the idea is that human relationship actually helps us get closer to divine connection. So anything between me and him is the same thing that's between me and my higher self, or me and God, or me and spirit, or universe creator, like whatever word you use. There's something in between us because there's something in between us, right? And so this partnership doesn't stop with him, right? I want to be able to extend partnership to my parents and to my siblings and to my coworkers and to my children and to my neighbors, and right? So everybody becomes interdependent. I become interdependent with everybody, not just with one person. I can practice here. This is a great place to practice because a lot of shit comes up here. A lot of clearing, thousands. It's a clearing happens here.
Because of her mostly.
Clear. Well, let's not point fingers. Let's not point fingers. So somebody asked where we live. Yeah, so I think you mentioned it, right? Do you want to say?
Blind Bay.
Shuswap Lake in the Okanagan. So we basically live on a mountain by a lake. That's where we live, in this little tiny community that's very hidden away.
So one thing I'll say about this this relationship piece, right? It's important that it doesn't stop with just us, right? This model has to be practiced, or should be practiced, with all of our relationships, like I was mentioning earlier, whether they're in work or in family, only because this will end, right? Like this, the physical part of this is temporary. At least that's my spiritual belief, that this is temporary, right? I'll be gone at some point, or she'll be gone.
At night, when I'm putting my cold feet on his and he's complaining, I say, one day you're going to miss these cold feet. And then he says, I'm going to die first. And that's our nighttime routine.
But the idea is that this will end at some point, and we still have to live, right? We still have to be able to survive in this world without each other, possibly. And so how do we do this? Is that if this is clear as much as it can be, then I can let go again, right? And same thing with relationship with my parents, and relationship with my kids and my siblings and my friends and my colleagues at work. Every time I'm looking at it, I'm like, oof, I'm trying to control. I'm being in power struggle. I'm judging. Like, why aren't they doing it my way? I'm always, again, it's like, it's not a constant thing where I'm not every minute of the day, I'm not thinking about this, but I do take time personally, and I know Sire does as well, to reflect on these things, to say, where am I here?
I just realized we should rename ourselves because it just says my name.
Well, you're that important.
No, I'll add you here. We'll just add Spezzano. Now that we're at the end of our day. See, okay. You're important to me.
So there was a question about boundaries. Do you want to answer
that?
Yes.
So now's the time for us to answer questions. We're going to leave the model up for a few more minutes, so you can look at it. You can think about your questions. If you wrote down any questions as we were going, put them in the chat box. We'll start answering questions.
The question about boundaries. You want to answer that?
That was asked earlier. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember it. So it's whether there's all boundaries are the same firmness or something like that.
Yeah, like do they come with?
Oh, someone said say it sex.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I was.
Yeah, she was.
Okay, so my sister earlier, remember, and I'm like, remember that first time? Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I was not talking about sex. I was actually talking about an orgasm, because those could be different things. But yes, on that note, there's new messages coming through. Okay, the person who wrote that question, would you mind?
I think that the question was around boundaries, and do they have to have like the firmness, like.
Oh yeah, here. Are there degrees of boundaries, or are most boundaries deal breakers? So what do you think? So people who are listening, from what we've talked about, what do you think the answer to that question might be? Are there degrees of boundaries, or are most boundaries deal breakers? What do you think? Type it in the chat. Oh, there you go. Yes, we will summarize the model as soon as we answer this. What do you think? Do you think boundaries are like the boundary and then you're done?
I think some can be.
I think, yeah, so some can be. Yeah. Some can be. It depends on how you define boundaries. Good one. Believe that there are degrees. Depends on what you're willing to compromise on. Think that, yes, there's degrees of boundaries. set the boundaries with your partner explicitly, right? So don't assume your partner knows your boundaries. I think there would be degrees. Yeah, degrees are possible. Depends on how far you're willing to compromise, and ever evolving boundaries. So these are, you're all right on, right? That boundaries we set and then we reset, and then we set and then we realize we don't need that boundary anymore because now we've internalized whatever it was, and we set a new boundary. The way to think about boundaries is this. Okay, so okay, I'll say that and then I'll go to that question. So the way to think about boundaries, this is how I like to think about boundaries. So I think about boundaries as, here's your life and it's a garden, right? And around your garden is a beautiful white picket fence, right? A little bit higher than the white picket fence you would imagine, like kind of up to here, this picket fence. Beautiful, painted, fresh. And in the fence, there's a gate, there's a door. And you get to decide who you let into the garden. And then they can come in. And then within the garden, there's like a secret special place in the garden. And only certain people get into there, right? Maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 people get into the secret special place in the garden. And so what does that mean? That has to do with how much I disclose. That has to do with sharing of my goals and dreams. That has to do with who I spend time with. So lots of people try to add me on Facebook, like so many people, right? And what people who know me know, no, not because I'm so popular, just because they see me or whatever, right? In a talk or whatever. And yeah, like every time I give a talk, I have like 10 new friend requests after the talk. And people who know me know, and I tell the other people as well, that I only will friend you on Facebook if I've actually sat down with you eye to eye and had a coffee and enjoyed that coffee. Otherwise, we're not friends on Facebook, right? Because it's how wide do we let our energy go? And that, I mean, that's just me. People have all kinds of ways of using social media, so don't think you have to go and delete all your friends on Facebook. But the point that I'm making is there are boundaries, right? Who gets in? And then what will I tolerate, right? So with what I'm going to tolerate with my child when they're 3 years old will be very different than what I'm going to tolerate with them when they're 8. Right? The boundary changes as the person evolves and grows, and my expectations change.
Right.
Set and reset over time. Does that answer? Hopefully that answers the question.
We'll let the person.
Yeah, so the person who asked the question, if you want to let us know if that answered your question, and we'll maybe go to this next question. Can you read that?
Yeah, the question is, are there different categories for the triangle, for kind of like finances, sex, what was the other one? Home responsibilities, general communication. I think I covered
money. Yeah.
Money. Yeah, finances. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there could be.
Yeah, there could be. Yeah.
We've never really broken it down like that, but yeah, absolutely. You could put your whole relationship on here and say, okay, with money, we're in power struggle. But in, our general responsibilities, we're actually in partnership. We're good at that. And then with sex, we're kind of in the dead zone, right? Yeah. So there could be those different things going on. And what you'd want to do is look at where do you spend, which elements are in interdependence and why are they there? What works? What's working? What are the things you're doing right? Remember I talked about the mountain and the ski hill? Interdependence is like the hiking trail where you hike side by side. And the way through interdependence is connect, connect, connect. That's the way through, right? So remember, you push, you go, you don't give up, and then you let go, let go, let go, let go, trust the process, and then connect.
And one of the things that somebody had, I heard somebody at Chuck Spezzano.
Type in your questions as we're answering.
Yeah, was that if I am, let's say I'm in the control part, I identify myself that I'm in a control part, that right across from it, what are my judgments? So those are things. So if I'm in power struggle, where do I feel hurt? Where have I felt hurt? If I'm in the dead zone, what are the needs that are not being met? Mm-hmm. Right? And because some of these are needs that haven't been met since I was a child, since I was a baby, that I don't even have conscious memories of, right? So as you're kind of going through this model, it's to kind of say, okay, if I'm in control, what are my judgments? These are the questions that I know I ask now. If I'm in a power struggle, let's say with finances, like, okay, where have I been hurt or possibly have hurt somebody with finances? So if we're in a dead zone, what are the needs that are not being met, right? And so continuously answering those questions kind of, again, helps me connect. connect back to the situation as well as
move,
connect with
right?
the person and
through.
move as well.
Oh, the other thing we didn't tell you was that on the screen right now, this triangle is 2-dimensional, but really it's a spiral. So it goes like this. It's 3-dimensional, it goes up. So it starts big and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, you know, that he can't do that on a piece of paper, but that's how he explains it. Because when we're first going through the triangle, it feels like it takes a long time to get around it. Then the next time takes a little bit less. And we're evolving our consciousness as we go, you know, each time we go around the triangle, we're going to the next level of consciousness, and we're different people as we go around it.
I'll speak one thing, right? Like, so because we can move fast, and one of the things I had talked about was that we have skills. So if I figured out a way to be interdependent in this relationship, and one of the places that I know I'm working on personally is, right, my old familial relationship of my kind of or family of origin relationship, right? So where I'm working is like, how can I build interdependence? So I'm taking the skill sets that I've learned in this relationship, or at work, I'm taking it there and saying, okay, how can I show up authentically? How can I allow them also to show up authentically, right? So that means that I'm looking at my needs and my hurt, and I'm judgments and control places, forgiveness, all of those things that need to be looked at.
Okay, I think, can you see us now?
Just us.
Just us? Say yes. Do you have any, oh yes. Do you have any recommendations for a couple with no peacock? Yes, passion. You got to find what you're passionate about. One or the other person. What is it that drives you? What is it that motivates you? Because you don't have to be a peacock the way I'm a peacock.
Yeah,
right.
I was just gonna say, like, not everyone needs to be Sarah's level of peacockness, right? Like, it's different.
There's other people who are way more peacocky than you.
No, of course they are, but I'll just say, like, I think you define what, right? Again, I think it's going to be important for you to define what your roles are, because I think one of the things we talked about was having role models, right? And yeah, we're willing to be role models, but this world can only take one phase on its Sarah. Right? The world needs you to show up as you, and what's important is you, and then you can be the role models for somebody else to allow them to be themselves, right? So
it's not about trying to clone
yeah
anybody, right? It's not about trying to be like. And so when you think about peacock, maybe think about the person who's a little bit more more ambitious or more outward or more interested in engaging in the world. So, and what can happen is when there's two people who are very
similar.
So, okay, let me say, yeah, the compassionate. Yeah. So Chuck talks about when there's two people who are peacocks, they spend a lot of time in power struggle. When nobody's a peacock, you spend a lot of time in the dead zone. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. But remember, the peacock thing, Spezzano just made it up. That's his own thing. But he talks about how when you're what he calls passionate relationships. So passionate relationships tend to be very fiery and intense and lots of fighting and or really undercurrent fighting. There's always tension. That's a passionate relationship. They spend a lot of time in power struggle. Chuck says they have 100,000 mountains to climb in power struggle. That's a passionate relationship. Then he calls another type of relationship a complementary relationship. So you kind of get along. Like there isn't much passion and fire and all of that, but you're pretty similar and there isn't much to fight about. Yeah. Those people have 100,000 mountains to climb in the dead zone, right? So we all have our kind of area of the triangle that we're moving through. But yeah, if you can't identify a peacock right away, the way of thinking of it is not necessarily who's the extrovert, but who's kind of more, if two of you are in a room together and you're at a party, who would be the one who other people want to talk to first, right? And you'll probably just know that because they just have that personality, that magnetism. And that's not a good or bad thing. It's just, and here's the thing, at a work party, it's not me. At Spezzano's work parties, it's him, right? So that's how we can work with that peacock.
It can be, like, you can actually come and take over there. You choose not to, right? Like you're like, okay, yeah, here I'm showing up in a support.
So somebody said to be or not to be. I'm not sure if that's like philosophical or if that's a question. So if that's a question, tell me a little bit more. Do you have any other questions about this triangle before we move to the next part of our time together? So if you do, just type it in the chat box. We'll give you a minute for that. And if while we're waiting for the questions, what I'd like you to do for yourself in your own journal is to write down 3 words or ideas that you pulled from this model. So what are 3 words or ideas that you pulled that like, oh, maybe, and maybe you've heard this 100,000 times because you're one of the people that works with me, but today, as you listen, what are 3 words or ideas that you pulled?
Some calls are asked. Says help us go through this
with our young adult children. Yeah. So the thing is here, if we're not okay, our relationships with our kids are not going to be okay, because kids can only attach to one person at a time. So they'll either be on my side or his side. But if we're partners, right, if we're together, then they attach to us as a unit. So if we're not okay, we don't even want to start talking about kids and in-laws and all that until we're okay. Right? So that's what I would say to that question. You asked already. Okay. I'm just wondering, when you mentioned the dead zone and starting to feel attracted to other people, is it normal to experience some attraction to others, even in healthy and functioning long-term relationships, or is this always considered a red flag? Well, it depends on how attracted. Like if somebody's just walking by and like, oh, they're beautiful, like that, whatever. Yeah. But if you're thinking about them and you're fantasizing about them and you're wondering when you could maybe see them, then yeah, that would be a red flag. But
and one of the things she also talked about was, right, like there's of course the physical attraction part, but if you're somehow getting there's an emotional attraction that's coming, right? Like you're getting pulled into that, like that is a red flag, right? Mm-hmm. That's like, okay, why do I want to have this emotional entanglement with somebody else?
Right.
So
yeah, so it depends on the degree again of the attraction, I would say. Another question, sibling rivalry between children, same thing that we said before, right? Children can only bond with one. And here's the other thing, if kids are not getting that security here, they will fight with each other, because the older one will tend to feel responsible. There's like a whole dynamic, and that's like a totally different workshop. But yeah, go back to the relationship, see what's happening in the relationship, and work as a team to figure out how to support your kids, right? And if you have very differing views, and then you're in power struggle, move through, right? Ask each other.
And if you're, I think there's another question again, it's like, how do you apply this triangle with young children? Again, this isn't to apply it with other people.
This is for you and your partner.
Yeah, I want to make sure, well, not just couples, but like any relationship, that's fine. You can apply this model with any relationship. But the idea isn't that they need to identify themselves where they are. I need to identify how I'm dealing with my son right now, right? Like with my son, I'm in power struggle at this point. Being honest, that's where I'm at.
And with my son, I'm actually in judgment. Right. It's the same son, right? So, but we're in different places because each relationship in the family system is. But I don't want to get distracted. Parenting.
No. Of course, right? That parenting is a different topic. What I think the questions are coming up. I'm just mentioning that it is about my relationship with this triangle.
Right.
Where am I? Because if I commit and I work on myself, doesn't matter what they're doing.
Exactly.
It's a little too late to raise children now. Like my son is 11 now. A little too late to raise him from, turn the clock back to 2. So
we're going to take about 2 or 3 more questions, and we're going to move to the next part. Yeah, we'll summarize it right at the end. So a couple of questions. So would this work with poly relationships? I'm not sure. The way that it was designed was like 1-to-1, so like a person to your boss, or mom and child, or partners. So that's how he designed the triangle. So I think maybe it would, but I don't know the answer to that one, because it wasn't designed for that. Good question though. We were just talking about
and
that,
we don't
right?
even have the experience.
And that's the thing with our group, right? Because we were thinking about, like, we're inviting couples, but there's lots of different ways to be in a relationship besides being in a couple. But that's what we know about, and that's what we studied, so that's what we're offering.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will summarize the triangle. Could you describe again partnership versus a stage where partnership is absent? So maybe just share this again, right?
Yeah. Just unspot
this one. Okay, go here. Screen 2.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's just unspot this.
Oh.
It's okay. Can they see?
Can you see the screen? Can you see the model? Say yes if you can. Anybody? Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. So your question was about partnership.
When it's absent.
When is it absent? So it's absent all through dependence and independence. Every single. Basically, if you're looking up at the person, like, oh, I'm so lucky to have them, and why do they pick me? And oh my gosh, they're going to leave me at any time. Then you're independence. If you're looking down at them saying, oh, lucky them, they've got me and I'm so great. Well, then you're in independence. So in dependence or independence, you're not in partnership. Hopefully that answers. How would you get about getting on the same page? One person sees the relationship from a different area of the triangle than the other partner. That's a great question.
Yeah, and I think we talked about a little bit where one person might be at a stage, like if we're thinking about it from a linear perspective, that I'm here, or Sarah's here and I'm here, I'm behind, right? And she's looking behind. She can only focus on what she needs to focus on, and I can only focus on what
That's
I can
the main thing, right? Because people, when people talk about the relationships, they often talk about the other person in the relationship, because that's what we've been trained to do. But what we're saying is that first it's about coming to honesty, peace, and accountability with your own self, right? What do I need to do to get out of judgment? Not what does he need to do to get out of, that's his path, it's his journey. I can't do it for him.
And I may never get out of it, right? I may never be what Sarah wants me to be in her mind.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about that in our group,
that's
right?
part of our group, yeah.
Yeah.
But in this particular perspective, the only thing I can focus on, I know, right? I'll speak like if Sarah's not coming to my stage and doing the same thing that I want to do, is I can only commit to doing what I can. So on this stage, I continuously look, right? And again, it'll go back to setting those boundaries possibly and talking about where am I struggling, communicating what my needs are and what my asks are and all. And again, deciding and continuously deciding where does that leave us.
So I'm aware of time. We have
Yes.
13 minutes.
13 minutes. We have to
and we want to just talk a little bit
summarize
about
this
the
and
group.
then, yeah.
Okay, so summary. We start in needs. When our needs are not met, we move to heartbreak. To get out of heartbreak, we start judging. Then, if we're willing to take accountability, we gain control, we set boundaries, we say what we want, we find our voice, which will lead us inevitably into power struggle because the other person isn't expecting that. And then after power struggle, when it goes on for a long enough time and we lose stamina, then we end up in the dead zone. To move through the dead zone, we need to make commitment, both feet in 100%. And that moves us to the bottom of the triangle, which is first partnership, seeing the other as on the same level as me, not better, not worse, which moves us to leadership, individually and together, and then vision, mastery. And some people are happy at leadership. Like you don't have to go all the way around the triangle, but there is another inner phase of the triangle as well, which is more about your spiritual journey and your calling.
And the other thing I will add about this is that you will most likely move through this. So just because you landed at partnership, you're like, okay, I'm done. Nope. You're going to get dropped back into something will happen and get back into this place of, oh, there's this other level of judgment that I have, right? And again, so that's where we're talking about in the mastery level. Even if you can get to the mastery level, there's places where you'll drop, right? Like, so from a mastery, somebody's asking kind of just quickly, mastery is about me being like, I could just show up, things happen, right? Things are happening.
It's like you're aligned with your soul and you're just walking the path easily. You're getting, there's no material limitations anymore in mastery. And if you're not in mastery or you don't know anyone in mastery, that can seem really woo-woo, but it's a real thing. It's really a real thing. I want to make sure that we get to the other part. So how do we do this?
Change the slide.
Change the slide by clicking.
Yes.
Okay. So we want to talk to you about the promises that you'd be making if you were to join our couples group. So there are people on this call who have already registered, and so I know that there's a few more questions about the triangle. So then that's something that we'll have to maybe talk about if you join the group, because that's about all we have time for today. But honestly, like we spent months and months and months learning about this. So you will have questions, and you'll revisit it and you'll learn new things. Okay, but let's move to the next part. So I'm not going to take any more questions about the triangle. Now we're moving into the group. So the group, let me tell you what we're thinking. So the 4 Sundays in February, one of them is actually Valentine's Day. We're going to be having our couples group. It'll be from 12 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll do something similar to this, but it'll be a lot more interactive. We'll all have our cameras on. We'll be able to talk to each other. It will not be recorded. We'll be doing this. So in each one, we'll do a little bit of teaching, and then we'll have a group discussion and maybe some exercises. We'd like you to be on the same device if possible, because we will be doing couples work with each other, gazing and different things like that. So come together. Don't come if the other person can't make it. You have to be in a couple. Like both of you have to be present in order to attend. Now, if there's a week that you're going to be away, just let us know. But one person can't just come if the other person, but you both have to be there. And so that's part of the be committed part, right? So the commitment, there's a few things in committing. So you're going to be on time. Thank you so much for everybody being on time today. We'll have the same sort of setup where we'll open the room a few minutes early, have some music, and then we'll start right at the hour. Stay for the whole session. So, you know, if you have another commitment that day, either miss our session or miss that thing, because we build a momentum as we're going in the group. And when a couple or, you know, 5 couples leaves, 45 minutes left, and it changes the dynamic. So please make sure you can be there for the whole session, and come prepared, right? Try not to just like slide in from something else. Like give yourself a few minutes, get your journal, get your water, maybe light a candle, set the space so that you're actually showing up and being prepared to be here and committing to be here. So that's the first thing, is being committed. The next thing we're asking for is to help us develop a safe space. And so there's a couple of things. You want to talk about the safe space?
No.
Okay. So there's so much I could say about safe space, but I'll just keep it simple. So one is privacy. So if you're in a room or a home where there's other people and they can hear you, please wear your headphones so that other people can't hear all of us talking. They can only hear you. So that's privacy. Projection. So projection is about, you know, someone in the group is talking and I'm starting to feel like, oh, this person is so doesn't get it, or like, what's wrong with them? Or I start judging them. Then that's actually a trick, right? That's a trick of my ego that wants to make me better than, that's the independent side of the triangle, right? And so if you're getting into that, like thinking you're better than other people, or thinking if they just change, they'll be better, back to the deep end, then take a moment, breathe, and ask yourself, like, what's going on here right now? Oh, it's because they remind me of my mom. That's it. Because most of us are strangers, right? So if we're triggering each other, that's a learning opportunity. So that helps create a safe space when we don't make it about the individuals in the room, but we actually go back to what is it about me that's happening in the room right now.
So before, just one thing I'll add to the safe space is we want to, of course, allow you to show up as you are, which also means we are asking you to commit to letting other people show up as they are.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of that, owning that projection. Part of, okay, who are they reminding us? That's that part, is that I want to allow them, I want to allow whoever it is that I'm having a judgment about to show up as whoever they are, wherever they are in their relationship, their life.
Because even if you don't say anything, there's an energy transmission, right? It would be much more apparent if we were in a room together, and there's some people on the call who have been in a face-to-face couples group with us, which was so wonderful. But even through the screen, like we can tell when people are, you know, these little these movements, and we can tell when people are judging us. So just really important that we all feel like we're here together for this safe space. Next thing is confidentiality. So what that means is you're welcome to tell everyone you know that you're in a couples group, absolutely, and tell them what you're learning. But what you're not welcome to do is share other people's stories. So if, you know, another couple was talking about, say, their financial situation and how they're working their way through it, and you wanted to share that with someone because, you know, you found it really helpful, instead of saying, oh yeah, in the couples group, there was this couple and they're going through this financial thing and da-da-da, instead of saying it like that, you would say, in couples group today, we talked about finances, and what I learned from that was da, 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 right? So we're actually protecting each other's. It's a next level of confidentiality. It's not just protect their identity, don't use names. It's don't use stories, don't tell stories.
And don't walk up to somebody just if you run into them in another Zoom call or you meet them on the street. Say, hey, how's that thing going?
Yeah.
The space,
it's here.
Yeah, it's limited to this space.
Whatever we talk about here, we only talk about it here. We don't talk about it outside this space.
And one thing I'll also mention something about confidentiality is that we're not, like, sometimes people run into us and we ignore them.
Yeah, we do.
And it's not meant as a disrespect. It's just that, again, if you want to come up and say hello and talk to us, we're fine. We'll start that conversation, but we're not going to come up to you and say, hey, so how's it going now? How's your relationship going now?
Or anything, because we want to protect your privacy. We don't necessarily want you to have to explain how you know us and all of that. So we're not going to come up to you, and we're not going to talk about you either. The next one, there's 3 more, and then we have to close. Accountability and do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this one is, again, I am responsible for my feelings right? Again, I'm showing up here. I want to show up and take responsibility for how I'm feeling, not how somebody else is making me feel. This whole work that we're doing as a couple, right, is an individual responsibility work. Is to show up that, okay, what am I bringing to the table and how am I accountable? So the responsibility here is to ask. Again, it's your responsibility to ask for what you need of us, of other couples, right? Also be responsible for the emotions that come up, right?
Not you made me feel sad, but I'm feeling sad.
Like I am feeling sad,
yeah.
right? And so we can then deepen that work. And this is not going to, see, the thing is, this work is not going to stop. This 4 weeks is not going to solve your problems. That's not what the 4 weeks are here for. It's to hopefully give you some tools to start looking at your life and saying, okay, how do I start improving? If that's the word that you need to use, how do I start improving? But this isn't, again, the responsibility is on you to say, I'm going to take this material, I'm going to start owning my relationship, and I'm going to start owning my responsibility.
Okay, next one is trust the process. So it's an unfoldment, right? Today is the beginning, it's our kickoff, it's really exciting, and each week we'll kind of be building. So trust, things are going to come up. We'll talk about that in our first group, that things will come up and you will gracefully move through them. When we're working on a particular area of our life, sometimes the demons start showing up. And so trust the process and stick with the process. If you start with us, end with us, because it's like you're going on this journey through the river, and don't jump out when the rapids come, right? Stay on the boat, stay with us, and we'll get through it together. And finally, allow for miracles. This doesn't have to be so hard. It doesn't have to be so serious. We can just heal things easily, and it can be fun. So allowing for miracles. Want to be respectful of your time.
We might go over, and so we might. So if we do, we'll just ask.
No, look, there's like 2 minutes. Okay, so we'll ask you for your grace and forgiveness to give us an extra 5 minutes. If you have to leave right at the mark, then we understand. But if you can stay on for 5 more minutes, that would be great. So here's the schedule. These are the different topics for each week. So next week will be about relationship foundations, how to make it last. So we'll be talking about some basic things that are required just to, backdoor, backburner, all of those kinds of things, and some fair fighting rules, and we'll talk about that. February 14th is Valentine's Day, but we're going to talk about how love is actually not enough. So we're going to go into communication and respect. And what that means, and going beyond the Hollywood love piece and actually going deeper into long-term committed love. February 21, we're going to go into some more like nitty gritty. So that's like when our bills need to be paid. So money, extended family priorities, planning, those types of things on the 21st. And then the 28th, we're going to be talking about actually moving mountains, right? So like, what does it take to become a team and have the abundance that you're looking for as a couple? So that's the end. We said we would hold this for questions, and so with our 5 minutes, we'll
hopefully, yeah. Yep. So if you haven't registered, for those that have, great. We're going to see you.
So this is not. This is questions about the group. So if you have any questions particularly about the group, we'll take those questions.
Yeah. Sorry. If you want to register, if you're still interested in registering, just email Syra. You see the email address here. connect@talktosyra.com. You should have received an email. If not, messages where you found us.
So you'll send me both of your names, your email addresses, and your contact phone numbers, as well as an e-transfer of $49. And we do have a sliding scale. So if finances are holding you back, don't let that be the reason you don't come. Just connect with us. We'll work it out. And then once we receive those things, we'll send you a welcome letter, and you'll join us next Sunday. But remember, you have to come with your partner. Yes. So if you can't come with, if your partner's not ready right now, maybe another time when we run this, you can try to sign up then. But if you're coming with your partner.
Yeah. And we have a podcast that we're going to start again. It can be found at subsidielife.com. It's just called Subsidy Life on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any other podcast apps that you have. All right, let's hear the questions about the program.
Any questions about the program? I'm going to just give you maybe a minute, and if none come through, then we'll just close. So if you have any questions about our couples group, Love Talks, 4 weeks in February. No questions, just
Just
excited. Yay.
Awesome.
Thank you for doing this group. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you next week. Can't wait to
Yes.
meet you all. Thank you. Do we need to be prepared with anything for next session?
So for the next session, no, just, I think, again, just show up with an open mind. And one of the things I'll say is, especially in this work, like I said, it does not answer all your questions. We will not be able to fix you. That's not what this group is about. We will not be able to make sure if you're like, because I know there have been couples that have come before where they're kind of ready to break up. And if that's your decision point, that, hey, at the end of this,
don't come.
Yeah, this isn't the place for that.
This isn't the place to save your marriage.
Right.
That's something, a totally different intervention style. This is about deepening and connecting and moving away the little things.
And again, the thing is, what you're coming prepared to do is to have an open mind to say, okay, I'm ready to jump in. And you might not get all your questions answered, but you're ready to continue working on this program past February.
Right. It's a mind shift change we're asking for, or we're hoping for. There's a few more questions. So when is the registration deadline? Registration deadline will be next Saturday at noon. That's the latest we're going to take people. So by Saturday at noon, if you haven't signed up, then you'll have to wait till the next group.
Noon Pacific, that is.
Pacific, and spread the word. So if you have people in your life who you think, oh my goodness, they would really benefit from this, spread the word, tell them to contact us. We're not, we're open. We do still have room in our course.
We'll post a recording of this, and we'll post it as well as send this via email.
Yeah. So if anybody if you know of people who are maybe wanting to come, they will have to review at least the second part. Well, no, they'll have to review the triangle. Yeah. So they have to review today's orientation so that we're all on the same page as we go into next week.
Because we're not going to be going into the triangle. Right, we're just going to be referring back to the triangle.
Exactly.
There was a question about little people.
Little people, yeah. So if you have little people in your lives, I would encourage you just to be on headphones in case they come in or out of the room.
Might be hard with might be hard with headphones.
Yeah.
So
do what you can. I mean, it's really up to you if you're parents to say, do I want my little child to hear what we're communicating with? I would see if you could find a way to make the audio so that only you can hear. Maybe that means you're on 2 devices. I'm not sure. But yeah, we have kids too. They might wander in, hopefully not, but
they actually did wander in.
Oh yeah,
you didn't see
screen,
it. Yeah.
Okay, so last question, like if we might have people in the room. Okay. So I think that's all of our questions, and we're 1 minute. Let's just do our closing. So we're just gonna all kind of sit comfortably in our chair. And what I'd like you to do is maybe just even close your eyes and just imagine we're in a room together. Like we're all in this big circle and we've just completed this workshop, and imagine you're just looking around at these faces of strangers and just everybody's on the same page. Maybe you want to hold your partner's hand right now. And maybe together we'll take a deep breath in. Let it out slowly. Let's do that again. Deep breath in. Let it out slowly. Last one, deep breath in. Let it out slowly. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we'll see some of you next week. The rest of you, thank you for joining us and hope it was helpful. Bye. How do I do this with the screen? You can say bye on your way out if you want in the chat box, and then there we go. People saying bye. Bye. Thanks for coming. See you later. We're just saying bye to everyone. So say bye and then log off so that we know that you're all. You can stop the recording. Yeah.